encouraged. One of the issues around the time to from bidding a proposal to winning is very long. One of the new things I do like in the FP7 program was the two-stage proposal process, where sometimes companies get invited in on the second stage when it's more likely to get funded later on. So that has somewhat reduced the time to securing grants. So I think that's a good innovation. But certainly it's interesting to hear that in the USA and DARPA at that 150 days, that actually is a better, it would be nice to work towards that model. For companies, we need to know early on, is it going to be successful or not, before we put too much effort into the whole proposal. So that would be very, very helpful. One of the areas where I think Europe doesn't do very well is very good in R&D, even on demonstration projects as well. The missing gap, I believe, is in scaling and manufacturing and production, how to get the innovation to the marketplace. I think in Europe we need more focus and more effort and support both at a national level and also at an EU level to encourage or to promote that more effectively. Otherwise, we do all the hard work of developing the technology, and then somehow it gets manufactured in China. So we're missing that piece of the equation, which I think needs to be looked at in great detail. The other key thing is, and I'm perhaps jumping on ahead, is finance. In Ireland, for example, there's plenty of money around for young startup companies, what we call seed fund. But after that, you know, the venture capitalists are supposed to step in to give you more capital, but that doesn't happen very well here. So there's what I call growth capital stage is very difficult to secure funding for that in Ireland. So we have to look overseas, and there are challenges around that. So I'm not sure how you fix that problem, but certainly perhaps more internationalization of VCs or better quality, or better supports in the EU could possibly be used here. Yeah, that's all I have to add at the moment.
Thank you, Mazar. And maybe Paul Frank might want to give your comments.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with pleasure. And I would like to start with effectiveness and efficiency of the Framework Program 7. And Baroness, we are looking forward to your assessment. As you know, we are quite used to be audited and evaluated, because it's a fact that 1 month later we will also receive an audit of the European Court of Auditors regarding efficiency and effectiveness of Framework Program 7. So be sure we are certainly the place which is the most evaluated on earth, and this is why it's so interesting to work for this institution. But serious, I think the question of time to grant is a key issue for the reasons you have set out. But I think, and this is not an apology, but I try to be very honest with you to try to explain why things are as they are. And I think we need to be aware of one thing. We are used to national research funding systems. And in order to have an added value on the European level, and that is our justification, despite of subsidiarity to become active at European level, is mainly two elements which provides added value compared to national research funding. It's the cooperative projects amongst frontiers and partners, which you do not have in a national funding system, as a general rule. If you have a funding in Austria, it's the Akademie der Wissenschaften who gives a grant to a single person. Here we have cross-border funding of many participants, and you should not underestimate the administrative charge, not only for the Commission, but also for the participants. But this is the price for the added value at the European level. And just be aware that the average participation in a cooperative project at the European level is 8 to 9 participants from at least 3 member states. So this in itself implies time. And the second element, I think, which makes a difference compared to a national funding system is, as you know, and you have referred to it, our parameter for the selection of project is the excellence. Now, you have thousands of applications. This is due to the fact that there are candidates from 27 member states, which again is a completely different scale as in a national funding scheme. So you have inbuilt obstacles, which by definition, if we want to provide this added value, make funding different from a national funding system. But this being said, I think we are really improving in terms of time to grant, and you have referred to 490 days. You will see in the report we have just drafted for the European Court of Auditors that in 2012, and again, this is certainly also due to the supervision and monitoring of our commissioner who chases us in this respect, we are now down in average for Framework Program 7 to 270 days, which is, by the way, exactly the legal commitment under the new financial regulation. So I think your point is correct, but please be aware that there are different framework conditions. And by the way, we can be quite tough. Listen, it's not always us who lead to delays in negotiations. If you have to deal with 8 partners for the coordinator, it's very difficult to get all the papers from his constituency. So we can be very brutal. I can tell to Coordinator Mazar, tomorrow I have all the papers, or you are out, and I start with the next one. Is this in the interest of the research community? It is not. So all these who push us in legal terms to shorten the time to grant should also see that this might be to the detriment of the research community. So I think this is really a very important point which is close to our heart. We see the risks, but please see also the framework conditions under which we have to work. On the demonstration projects, as Mr. Potres has referred to, I think, yes, this is certainly one of the key issues which should distinguish Framework Program 7 from Horizon 20 or Horizon 2020 from FP7. Much more emphasis on demonstration projects. There is an issue which you have referred to, is that demonstration projects funding is much more expensive than basic research funding. And an issue which we have to face is that we need to be sure that the funding rates for pure demonstration projects are lower than the funding rates for the basic research work. And I think this is what we try to take, or at least this is what our legislative proposal takes into account, because he foresees differentiated funding rates depending on whether you're doing purely or almost exclusively demonstration or research and demonstration. And the final point on the remark of green growth, I think if you look at Horizon 2020, you will find this subject almost everywhere. Sustainability of development is a cross-cutting issue which is covered under energy, under transport, climate change. You find it everywhere, and in addition there is a dedicated activity foreseen, which is the bio-based industry, in which we even consider to have a joint technology initiative exactly to reinforce these green growth aspects.
Okay, thank you, Wolfgang. Do we have any more questions or comments on the floor before we close the session? Doesn't have to be questions, we'll take comments as well, because most people take comments anyway. Deputy Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. It's in relation to, first of all, to welcome the quite extensive budget for Horizon 2020. I mean, your slide earlier on, Wolfgang, highlighting the correlation, the strong correlation between research and investment and jobs and growth is startling, and it's something that we shouldn't take lightly. And but given that there seems to be a big push to simplify the application system, particularly from an SME point of view, given that the nature of somebody who works in an SME or owns an SME can vary, obviously they're quite enthusiastic and they're full of ideas, but you know, the level of time and commitment they have, given that they're running a business, to actually dedicate towards fulfilling a successful application. And I know you mentioned earlier on, Imelda, about Enterprise Ireland working basically hand in hand with applicants. But given the nature that the background of some people who may run an SME might vary quite differently from people who are highly qualified up to university and beyond. As Mazar, you said yourself, you know, you had completed a PhD at a different stage. But I'm quite well aware that many of the SMEs that I know and the people who head those may not have that experience. They may have a much lesser level of education. And so the question really is around that application system and the simplified application system. Will it really be simplified? And of course, it still has to have a level of complexity because this is money that is transferring over. But will it be simplified to the level that those people who would shy away from even trying to access funding because they think this is alien to them, that this will bring those into that net so that they will feel comfortable and confident in wanting to get involved in applications? Because that is the reality that you know, these people are very busy on the ground, they're working more than full time, and then to take on an administration level in order to source funding can be a daunting task. So any sort of simplified access, you know, would have to mean a very watered down amount of obligations and time consuming efforts on the SME's behalf in order for them to actually get on with the work.
Thanks, John. Before I take the answers to that, any other comments from the floor? No, we're happy enough. Okay, final chance. This is the final offer. Just to add in a question myself as well. Do we need to do more to advertise the availability of this money to companies out there, or to innovators, or to people who might not know it's there, or that it actually is possible to get it? It comes across us a lot at the committee. People say, we didn't know that was there. Now, we had this chat last night, but when people should know it's there if they follow, but not everybody has time. So do we need to do more as committee chairs? Do we need to do more to advertise the various options and funding available through EU programmes? And just your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Chair. I think as regards giving guidance and advice, we have really best practices from member states. We have heard today the scenario, the case of Ireland. I have similar experience in Austria. So I really think the success in terms of participation really depends on the quality of national contact points to advise potential candidates, exactly for the reasons you have set out, because they have not so much time to dedicate their whole time. And you have seen the differences in terms of success rates, whether you have professional help from the national contact points, if you hand in an application or not. So I think this is certainly crucial to all this participation debate, successful participation debate. And I'm certainly also convinced that the measures we have taken will really simplify life. So I'm really convinced about this. But just two bemolls, which are not really bemolls, but we will not necessarily change a situation where the success rate in an application, and you have referred to, is 1 out of 5 is successful, because there is a limit of money available, and there are so many interested, high-quality projects. So if there is frustration, I'm not surprised, because if you prepare a proposal and only 1 out of 5 receives funding, although he is even a highly qualified application, this creates frustration. But what shall I do about this? And this raises another question, and I think, again, it's an important discussion also with national parliaments, because it's about the question of what subsidiarity does it really mean. Subsidiarity also applies to SME funding. You have SME funding instruments, including research funding, at the regional level in certain places. You have it at the national level, and you have SME research funding in structural funds. So what SMEs also have to consider, depending on the content of their project, is what is the best place to receive funding. Not for each project, the best place is to go to Horizon 2020. No, this is the most competitive in Europe, and you must have really a good case to get it through. And people need to be aware of these kind of things. So this is why this is related also to the question, what is the right level for funding what kind of initiatives? And I think, this being said, I am convinced that the measures I've initially set out will simplify life for participants, SMEs.
Maybe just a comment on, how do you advertise? I suppose we've had mixed experience here in Ireland that on the one hand, our team, we've a very good knowledge of the research-capable companies, the academics, the people in our research institutes. So we have a key target audience who represent the largest national research investments. But yes, of course, we're always looking for newcomers. And we've gone through phases of, for example, taking one-page ads in our newspapers to advertise our champions of research and to look for others who might subsequently say, "Ooh, I should try that," but with very mixed results. And so in reality, it's quite a complex process. It's complex in the research that people will work on in a very complex environment with typically 9 partner organizations, for example, and they'll have to work internationally. And it's complex in terms of that application process. So we can open the doors to a full advertising campaign to anybody and everybody out there, but they're really not individuals or companies who are actually going to make it through the application process. So they're somewhere in the middle where you're trying to reach everybody that you absolutely are sure can use the program without raising false hopes, you might say. And I think in a country like Ireland, we have a small number of research funding organisations, industrial development organisations, where we interact right across our organisations and across our government departments. So we actually know the people, or we can find them, without, as I say, having to put an ad in the newspaper, in every evening newspaper, for example. But as I say, there is definitely an issue there across all of our countries as to do you get that balance right.
Okay. Thanks, Amanda. Mazar, do you want to add some comments?
Just a few points just to pick up on some of your comments. As Wolfram mentioned, there are stages for any company. First, the starting point is what's the idea, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and perhaps your first point is to start with the local bodies, SCAI or Enterprise Ireland, to begin to try to solve that problem. And then if you're successful there, then move on to European projects or other instruments. So I think there's a staging involved for a new company which hasn't been involved in any EU projects. Just go straight in is quite a big ask. There's a lot of learning along the way as well. So perhaps they should start off with local funding first, innovation vouchers or other schemes, and then from there move on to other projects. For companies who don't have access to resources internally, there are consultants out there who can help companies put together proposals or projects, and you can work with them or hire part-time project managers. So there's ways and supports which could be carried out.
Okay, thanks for that, Mazar. Just in wrapping up this session, and we will bring this session to a close, I want to make a couple of comments. And I want to thank first of all our 3 speakers up here, and very enlightening presentations and very informative of how the system actually works and what's in. I think it's a window into the heads of yourselves who are dealing with this on a regular basis, and it'll help put us in a better place as committee chairs and members to be able to advise and to act on policy as well on this issue, because I think Horizon 2020 is a big project. And it's important that we're all up to date on it and be able to get the best use out of it for all our member states, but also as a European project in general, that we are funding the best research and we are getting the best out of our young entrepreneurs and geniuses like Dr. Mazar out there as well, that we can tap into. Just in my opening remarks this morning, I referred to the need for Europe to show leadership and to provide hope to our young people, and also practical support to our innovative entrepreneurs who are the drivers of SMEs and the job creators in Europe. I think from today's presentations, we know there is hope there, but I was struck this morning by Ms. Joanna Drake when you comment about that the entrepreneurial spirit is on the way down and it's declining in Europe, and the number of entrepreneurs is declining. That's very concerning, and it's something we really have to focus in on and have to work. There's a couple of different reasons for that, I suppose we need to approach as well. But certainly one is perception. And people living through austerity times are given that would feel that it's the wrong time to take a chance or to start a business, so they're not really encouraged. And we do need the media, I think, across all our European project to maybe talk up what we're trying to do. I know we're going through tough times, but there's also a lot of hope out there. There's a lot of support, a lot of initiatives, and we do need that message to get out there, that actually in tough times is often a good time to start a business. And certainly if your business works and takes off in bad times, it'll certainly be successful during good times as well. There is a fear out there, and I think it's come across both our committees because we cover enterprise and social protection issues, is the safety net, that if you do take a chance to start a business, and you do employ people, and you do pay taxes, that if your business goes wrong, okay, we all know, because we deal with it, that your next time round you'll probably be more successful as a business person, but you have to survive in the meantime. And if you have a family to feed and to look after and so on, there needs to be a safety net, and we need to encourage people that if you are going to take a risk and start a business, that the state will look after you afterwards if something goes wrong for a short period of time, because we can't have a situation where people take a chance to start a business, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, very often outside their own control, that they're left there with no help. And that's a key thing that we're coming back to our committee. Entrepreneurs do need to know that there's a safety net, that if it doesn't work out, we look after them. So yes, today was all about the help they can to start the business and keep it going. We need to cover both as well. So I think it was useful that we had our Commissioner here this morning and Social Protection Minister as well to hear that message too. In his address, Minister Bruton, along with Ms Drake, pointed out to the opportunities which help SMEs and which SMEs in Europe can exploit. The EU single market, the trade with non-EU countries, European research funding to help commercialise EU ideas, and also the new initiatives to finance SMEs which are now available to the SMEs throughout Europe. And it's great that that's going to be all centralised now. We'll be able to follow that quite clearly on the map that's been launched. I think it's this week we hear about it as well. Again, our Speaker from the European Commission, Ms Drake, and through her contribution today, reassured us that entrepreneurship, through the Entrepreneurship Action Plan, will create an environment to foster entrepreneurship and is a blueprint to release the potential of European entrepreneurs like our international competitors. Women, and particularly young people, need to be targeted particularly, and both Member States and the EU must contribute to the achievement of the objectives of the action plan. And I was glad that during your presentation this morning, Ms Drake, that you referred a lot to young people as well, and to try to get that message across. After that, then, Ms Campbell has shown us how, by reinventing an old business model, she has developed a thriving and innovative international company. Her message to us all was to think differently, and to me that's a lesson for us all, because it can happen to us that we're in our committees doing our work, we can get into a kind of a certain frame of mind, and it's important that we always remember that there's many different types of business models out there, and success comes in many different ways. And I think her business was a really clever idea, and it shows how a bit of imagination can really turn into jobs and turn into a successful business. So I'm glad she was able to be here and to go through her presentation and her visual presentation as well. Likewise, this afternoon, Mr Bursher has assured us that innovation funding through Horizon 2020 is a concrete step being taken to support our bright, innovative business people. And they're there to help SMEs bring their ideas to market. Our colleague from France did mention that it's to make sure we fill the gap afterwards, that we get it to market, but a lot of businesses then need cash to expand. And I think there's a role for us all as Member States to really focus on that area as well, the expansion model, to be able to create a few extra jobs as they go along. Overall, the contributors were very insightful, and all agreed that SMEs are vital to the European economy and need to be supported in every practical way we can. Like it's the need to remove costs, such as administrative or regulatory burdens, and also access to financing. The link between industry and education. Again, it was mentioned this morning that one of the biggest issues is not just access to finance, and you would think that it was from the media. It's actually access to skills. So the need for better competition law was also mentioned. And the competition, or lack of, in the single market remains a challenge, and SMEs need to fully exploit that opportunity. And I know our colleague from, I think it was Sweden, mentioned that sometimes there's a lack of competition, so we have to focus on that as well. It was also valuable to hear from Dr Mazar Barry on innovation and enterprise, and how, with the help of European research funding, he is now leading a successful and innovative business. They talked of completing all your educational qualifications when you were that size, and I probably well believe it. You probably were very young when you were doing all this. So fair dues to you, and you're a credit to us all. But you've also given us food for thought on where the system can improve and where we can make changes. And Dr. Melda Lampkin, I think, was very interesting to see the success and the excellent work you're doing through the National Support Network for Framework 7. I think it just shows you're very focused on that, and that is getting results, because the increase in the figures and the applications and the money being won for this country, it was very clear and very evident that what you're doing, the organisation of that and the targeting and focusing of it, so has been a success, and hopefully other countries can learn from that as well. So well done on that, and thanks for sharing it with us here today as well. But I think all three of you have showed that, and the speakers this morning, that where practical supports are given, SMEs will thrive and will success, and it's vital that we keep that going as well. So again, I want to extend our gratitude to all our speakers, both in sessions 2 and 3. It was very interesting, and I want to thank you all for your engagement and for our conversations over lunch as well. Before I call on my co-chair, Joanna Tuffy, to make his concluding remarks, I'm going to call on our colleague from Lithuania, hope I get his name right now, Mr. Zemetatis, would that be right, Tatis? Or quite close? But anyway, you might say a few words because you're going to hold the next one, so appreciate that. Thanks folks.
Dear Chairman, dear colleagues, it's a great honor for me to congratulate Ireland for its 7 successful presidents of the Council of Europe Union. Please accept our sincere gratitude to the Irish colleagues for the well-organized and relevant meeting. Warm welcome and traditional Irish hospitality. Especially last evening, I hope that our chairman, Mr. Dearman English, will dance for us, but it doesn't happen. I think so next time when we meet him, he will do it. As you know, in the second half of 2015, Lithuania will hold the presidency of the Council of Europe Union for the first time in its history. We will do our best to ensure that our presidency is equally successful. On behalf of Mrs. Kristina Miškinienė, Chair of Seimas Committee of Social Affairs and Labour, and on my own behalf of Chair of Committee on Economy, I would like to sincerely invite you all to an event organized by the Seimas in the framework of a parliamentary dimension of the presidency. This will be a meeting of the chairpersons of the Committee of Social Affairs and Labour on 10th and 11th of November 2015, entitled Employment Instance to Implement the European 2020 Strategy. We look forward to welcoming you in Vilnius. I am inviting you, all of you. Thanks.
Thanks for that. I'm now calling my colleague, Ms. Joanna Tuffy, to say some concluding remarks.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Deputy Zemetatis for his kind remarks, and to wish the Lithuanian delegation good luck with their presidency. And I also just want to mention also Cyprus on their very successful presidency just before Ireland's. Colleagues, fellow parliamentarians, advisors and guests, this morning we discussed the issue of the youth unemployment and the need for a youth guarantee, and youth unemployment was something that Commissioner Laszlo Andor referred to as a ticking social time bomb. It's very welcome what he said to us this morning about the EU member states becoming more focused on the need to address this issue. The guarantee will be an important part of an approach that involves social solidarity with our fellow member states and young people in our member states. And this aspect was acknowledged by our 2 speakers, Commissioner Andors and Minister Burton, this morning in response to contributions from delegates in that regard. We were told that there will be 6 billion EU funding for the European Youth Guarantee, and this is very welcome. And also we were told of the need to cater for what works best in individual member states, and also prioritising youth unemployment in national budgets as well as the European Union budget. We were given some very good examples from both the 2 speakers and from delegates that we can learn from, and also new proposals and ideas. This topic was very much complemented then by the following sessions on entrepreneurship and enterprise through innovation, as outlined by my co-chair, Deputy Damien English. I just want to thank everybody for all their contributions. I also want to thank all those involved in organising today's events, both from the Oireachtas but also from the secretariats of the other parliaments. The work of national parliaments will be so important, ensuring that the European Youth Guarantee and the initiatives on enterprise and innovation are implemented. So I hope that you, as national parliamentarians, found today's conference helpful. And I just want to say I hope you enjoyed your stay here, and I want to wish you, on behalf of us here, a safe journey home as well. Okay, thank you.
So a note on the accountability of the central bank. Is there any questions in relation to that? I think that Deputy Ross was...
But I haven't completed my discussions with him.
All right,
Chairman.
okay.
So,
But that letter is to go, is it?
yes,
We're
that's
still
right.
doing that.
Yes, that's right, yes.
3, correspondence received since the 18th of April. 3A, correspondence from the accounting officers. 3A1, correspondence dated 9th of April to John Tierney, Chairman of the Authority, forwarding information previously requested by the committee in relation to its examination of special report number 77 of CNAG and Dublin Docklands Development Authority. To be noted, we've already discussed this matter. 3A2 is correspondence dated 25th of March 2013 from Mr Dermot Quigley, Expenditure Policy Evaluation and Management Division, Department of Public Expenditure Reform, providing information requested meeting 7th of March 2013 regarding property leases, to be noted and published. 3A3, correspondence dated 23rd of April 2013 from Niamh O'Donoghue, Secretary General, Department of Social Protection, providing further information requested meeting 14th of March 2013.
Just before you go on the Dublin Docklands, is the site itself currently in NAMA? Okay. I think it should be considered that NAMA would pull in as a witness, because NAMA probably would have a huge amount of knowledge of the actual. It's just something to consider down the road. Would probably have a huge amount of. They have all the documentation, so they would know. There's a huge legal aspect to the way that site was acquired and how that site came about back end. And it's just something maybe, Chairman, you made reference to that when they come in next week, in terms of witnesses you'd bring on board, we'll say thereafter. It might be worth considering NAMA as well.
Well, again, in the context of what we hear next week, all of those, NAMA and any other individual can be considered. Once we get an idea of where we're going with it. 3A3, correspondence dated 23rd of April 2013 from Ms Niamh O'Donoghue, Secretary General, Department of Social Protection, providing information requested the 14th of March, to be noted and published. Deputy O'Donoghue raised this matter last week. We'll be examining the whole issue of work activation measures at our next meeting, the 4th of July, and we'll have a representative from the Department of Social Protection at that meeting. 3B, can I just say in relation to the leases, I just want to examine.
Yeah, 3A2.
3A2.
Let's go back.
Well, we won't do it today, but if we can just examine that.
Well, he's only given us a holding reply to say he's getting the information, Chairman.
All right, so we haven't got the full details.
We haven't got the
yet.
details at all.
Okay.
No.
Well, if you just
Yeah.
flag that for,
Yeah.
ensure that we get a response to
Yes.
it. Individual correspondence. Correspondence dated 23rd of March 2013, Mr Pat Gagan, Secretary, Irish Environmental Forum, the Environmental Protection Agency, to be noted. Mr Gagan has raised issues around the competency of the EPA. It appears that his interpretation of a report of air quality differs from that of the department. His latest letter suggests that the emissions from certain industries here are costing €1 billion. If that was the case, I'm sure it's a matter that would feature in the report of the CNAG, and therefore I would ask the Environmental Forum to be more specific as to the failures of the EPA, and it will be up to the members to follow up on the issue with the EPA when they come before us on the 27th of June 2013. 3B2, correspondence dated 15th of April 2013 from Professor Niamh Brennan, former Chairperson, Dublin Docklands Development Authority, recommitting examination of Special Report number 77 of the CNAG and Dublin Docklands Development Authority. It is to be noted, this matter has already been discussed the earlier part of our meeting. 3C, documents relating to the committee meeting 25th of April 2013. 3C1, correspondence received 22nd of April 2013 from the Health Service Executive, briefing papers and matters to be considered at our meeting today, to be noted and published. Correspondence received 25th of April 2013 from the Health Service Executive, read the opening statement, to be noted and published. 4 reports, statements and accounts received since our meeting on the 18th of April. 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3 are listed there. If there's any queries, members can now raise them or contact the clerk if you wish to have them on the agenda. Our work programme then. The work programme is on the screen. At last week's meeting, members expressed concern in the fact that the committee was examining 2011 accounts and 2012 accounts should at this stage be finalised. It was raised in respect to the broadcasting fund, where it had wider implications, especially around this time of the year. I've been advised that the same issue will arise in respect of the IDA, which is scheduled to appear on the 30th of May, and it may be appropriate if we defer that meeting to September, and we can schedule other business for that day. Is that agreed? Members wanted to have the annual report.
Yeah, we can deal with 2012 accounts still at that stage.
Yeah, so we can be more up to date with our examination. And it's something that we'll consider as we invite witnesses. So for the moment, we'll reschedule that meeting and have the reports together. Any other business then? Can we agree the agenda for Thursday the 2nd of May at 10 o'clock? We've gone through this earlier on regarding the Dublin Docklands Development Authority. That's agreed. At our meeting on 28th of February 2013, we held the vote 26, Education and Skills. We held that open because the department, we asked for further information, so the department has since furnished the committee with detailed information, and with your agreement now, I would ask you to note vote number 26. The accounting officer is due back before us on specific issues, but would be appropriate in terms of preparation for the next meeting if that vote was not part of the agenda. The information has been submitted. Agreed? Agreed.
Thanks, John.
Any other business? We now call the witnesses then to the room, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, after the... I always keep an eye out for you. You know that? Yeah. Item number 7 now, the appropriation accounts and annual report of the CNHE. Vote 40, the Health Service Executive, HSE Annual Financial Statements 2011. Before we begin, can I remind witnesses, members and those in the public gallery to turn off their mobile phones, and it interferes with the sound quality of the meeting. I also want to advise members who are protected by absolute privilege in respect of the evidence you are to give the committee. If you are directed by the committee to cease giving evidence in relation to a particular matter, and you continue to do so, you are entitled thereafter only to a qualified privilege in respect of your evidence. You are directed that only evidence connected with the subject matter of these proceedings is to be given, and you are asked to respect parliamentary practice to the effect that where possible you should not criticise or make charges against a member of either House, a person outside the House, nor an official by name or in such a way as to make him or her identifiable. Members are reminded of the provision within Standing Order 163 that the committee should also refrain from inquiring into the merits of a policy or policy of the government or a minister of the government or the merits of the objectives of such policies. I want to welcome Mr. Tony O'Brien, Director General Designate Health Service Executive. Can I ask you to introduce your officials, please?
Thank you, Chairman. To my immediate right is Ms. Laverne McGuinness, who is the Chief Operations Officer and Deputy Director General Designate. To her right is Barry O'Brien, the National Director of Human Resources. To my immediate left is Mr. Paddy MacDonald, who today is acting as National Director of Finance. And to his left is Liam Woods in his new role as National Director of Shared Services.
And the department.
Tom Heffernan, Sectoral Policy Division, Department of Public Expenditure and Reform.
Thank you very much. Can I call Mr. McCarthy, please, to introduce the accounts?
Thank you, Chairman. As the Chairman has stated, the committee is examining the 2011 accounts of the Health Service Executive. As background to this, it may be useful to explain that the HSE is required to produce 2 sets of accounts each year. These are financial statements prepared on an accruals basis and a cash-based appropriation account for Vote 40. These provide two views of the same set of financial transactions and balances with different forms of analysis and detail. The two audit reports also issue. The HSE publishes the accruals-based financial statements each year with its corporate annual report. The 2011 statements were presented to Dáil Éireann around the first week of June last year. The HSE's 2011 appropriation account was published by me, together with all the other appropriation accounts last September. The audit of the HSE's financial statements for 2012 is almost complete, and I expect to sign off on it around mid-May. The audit of the appropriation account for 2012 is also ongoing and should be completed by July of this year. The appropriation account indicates that the HSE's gross expenditure in 2011 amounted to €13.9 billion. The outturn was around 4% below the 2010 gross expenditure level and 8% below the peak expenditure in 2009. Appropriations in aid in 2011 amounted to €1.45 billion, down from €3.5 billion in 2010. The decrease reflects the ending of earmarked health contributions collected through the PRSI system with effect from 1 January 2011, when the universal social charge was introduced. The outturn for 2011 was close to the amount appropriated by Dáil Éireann, resulting in a surrender of just under €16 million. This was achieved after provision to the HSE of an additional €148 million by way of a supplementary estimate in December 2011. Two-thirds of the additional provision was for increased spending under subhead B6, which covers spending on medical card schemes and community services. The outturn for those services was €2.58 billion in 2011, which was 6.8% above the original estimate for the year. The provisional outturn for 2012 indicates that spending in those areas continued to run ahead of the estimate provision last year, ending around 9% up on the estimate provision. This was one of the main reasons a supplementary estimate amounting to a net €360 million was also required in 2012. The financial statements present an analysis of the HSE's expenditure that distinguishes between pay and non-pay elements. The HSE's direct pay expenditure in 2011 amounted to just over €5 billion, or 36% of the total spent. This included pension payments to retired staff totalling €567 million and payments to agency staff amounting to some €177 million. Grants to outside agencies amounted to €3.5 billion, or 25% of the total in 2011. This includes funding of the order of €2.5 billion to voluntary hospitals and other major agencies providing services on behalf of the HSE, mainly in the disability and mental health sectors. A further €1 billion was distributed as grants to some 3,000 smaller agencies, including community and voluntary bodies providing a wide range of services ancillary to the HSE's activities. A significant part of that grant funding is also applied in the payment of staff salaries and pensions. The audit report on the financial statements draws attention to note 35. This deals with the matter of entitlement to means-tested medical cards. At end December 2011, there was a total of 1.7 million medical cards in issue, plus 126,000 GP visit cards. The total related expenditure in 2011 was around €1.8 billion. Administration of the card issuing and renewal systems was centralised in July 2011. Changes were made in the related control systems and procedures were standardised. Following the centralisation, over 231,000 applications for renewal of expired cards were processed, with 97.5% being renewed. However, 1.2% of applicants were found not to be eligible for a new card, and almost 1.3% were found to be eligible for the more limited GP card instead of a full medical card. The review process did not record the financial impact incurred, such as the cost of services provided in respect of ineligible persons while they held cards. This matter is being examined in more detail in the course of this year's audits, and depending on the outcome, I may report further on the matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. O'Brien, can I have your opening statement, please?
Chairperson, members, thank you very much for the invitation to attend today's meeting to discuss Vote 40, Health Service Executive, and indeed the annual financial statements for 2011. Prior to the meeting, we submitted an information pack to the committee which, among other matters, provided an update on the recommendations in the committee's recently published report on the HSE, and we will of course be very happy to take any questions or follow-up on the information provided, or indeed other related matters. I propose therefore to keep my opening statement brief. In 2011, the HSE delivered a balanced vote and delivered the National Service Plan commitments within its funding provision against very challenging resource constraints, both in financial and staffing terms. As you know, it's a statutory requirement to the accounting officer that no overspending of the vote takes place. In practice, it's almost impossible to achieve an exact break-even position on a gross vote outturn of 13.687 billion. And it is inevitable that, in accordance with prudent management, a small surplus will be returned to the Exchequer. The surplus surrendered in respect of 2011 was 15.781 million, which amounts to 0.1% of the net 2000 allocation of 12.46 billion. A supplementary estimate of 148 million was voted by the Dáil to the HSE at the end of 2011. This comprised 58 million euros due to a shortfall in funding in 2011 arising from a lower than anticipated uptake in the early retirement and voluntary redundancy schemes implemented at the end of 2010, and 90 million to meet deficits in services, specifically in the community drug schemes, the acute hospital sector, and child welfare and protection services. The 148 million supplementary estimate was offset by savings of 40 million in the vote for the Office of the Minister for Health. The HSE reported a surplus in the revenue, income and expenditure account of 98.426 million for 2011, comparing with 123.924 million for 2010. A substantial element of this surplus is technical in nature and is attributable to the differences between the differing bases of accounting under accruals and vote accounting rules. Funding for capital projects in 2011 amounted to 345.424 million, of which 204.311 million was expended on HSE capital projects and 132.755 million on capital grants to service providers. Developing a robust and fit-for-purpose financial system is a priority for both the HSE and the Department of Health. In that regard, the Ogden Review was commissioned by the Department of Health in May 2012, and the report was completed in July 2012. The review looked at financial processes, budgeting, reporting, performance management and escalation, and governance and leadership. The key purpose of the review was to recommend where the focus of a strategy for financial performance management should be. The recommendations ultimately led to the Department of Health commissioning further work to focus on implementing change in relation to key issues highlighted in the review. This further work, commissioned in July 2012, with a report issued in September 2012, was undertaken in the context of predicted continued significant financial overruns and a need to provide assurance to government and to the Troika in relation to the financial position of the health sector. The report highlighted the need to take immediate action to improve the financial management systems in health. The key priority for me on my appointment in August 2012 was to stabilise HSE finances and to implement the actions outlined in the second review, the PA review, commissioned by the department. The engagement of PA by the HSE was one of the first steps in the financial reform of the health service, which is a central element of the overall reform programme. This work is well underway and is due to be completed in the coming weeks and will lay the foundations for further financial reform. The appointment of a new Chief Financial Officer to the HSE is also central to driving forward the changes needed to develop the finance function in the context of the wider health reform programme, including money follows the patient and universal health insurance. The selection process to fill this post is currently underway and is due to be completed shortly. The HSE has an internal audit directorate led by a national director, which includes very experienced audit staff. The Directorate also avails of external specialist support, particularly in the form of ICT audit. The work of the Internal Audit Directorate is overseen by the HSE's Audit Committee. The Directorate regularly briefs the Office of the Controller and Auditor General on the results of its work. A substantial body of internal audit reports are completed each year, covering a wide range of topics, and HSE internal audit reports are periodically released. I am committed to further strengthening the internal audit function of the Health Service as a key control measure during the period of structural transition that lies ahead. Financial reform, in all its forms, is a key component in the ongoing health reform programme, and one that will continue to be a major focus for us. And that concludes my opening statement. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. O'Brien, will you publish your statement?
Yes, yes, sir.
Gurmahagat Cahirlach agus Fád Shillig. You're all very welcome here this morning. Can I just say to you, Mr. O'Brien, I'm just struck by something in your initial statement, because you don't have a good track record in terms of staying within budget. And we've had itemised there a supplementary estimate of 148 million in 2011, 360 million in 2012. And yet I was curious to hear you refer to the returning of a surplus. So could you just say briefly a few more words on that? The term surplus and HSE are not, shall we say, very linked in the public mind.
Your comments are obviously correct. They're not very much linked in the public's mind. However, in vote terms, following the granting of a supplementary at the end of the relevant financial year, the amount of cash on hand at the closing date was in excess of the requirements of the service at that point in time, and the requirements are to return that surplus.
Okay, so it's a surplus, but taking account beyond the supplementary.
Beyond the supplementary, yes.
Okay, so we just need to tease out what that means in funding terms, because it would be, I mean, technically a surplus was returned, but you're only in a position to return a surplus having been in receipt of a supplementary estimate.
That's correct.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that we have an ongoing issue here in respect of the adequacy of the funding afforded to the HSE?
Well, to the extent that in the year in question and in other years that the Dáil has voted for supplementary estimates, that is for the purpose of ensuring that the funding available in that year is adequate to meet the demands in that year.
No, I understand that, but in the initial vote of funds to the